On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a digital marketer in life sciences. And today we're tackling some of the most pressing issues facing pharmaceutical manufacturers right now. Global pricing complexity, regulatory compliance, the future of drug access, and why the industry is transforming in ways that have nothing to do with what's making headlines. And so with that, I'm going to welcome in my two headliners here from Model N. They're the company that provides revenue management and compliance solutions to nearly half of all of the top 25 pharmaceutical manufacturers in the world. We were talking before the show that, oftentimes, even in my life and my walk, I oftentimes feel like I'm talking to a lot of the same people that they would be dealing with as well. So let me first introduce Jesse Mendelsohn. He's the Senior Vice President with nearly 20 years in the industry and deep expertise in pharmaceutical pricing, Medicaid, and state pricing regulations. And then also Michael Grossberg. He's the Vice President of Product Management, overseeing life science products across Model N's portfolio. He's a data scientist and self-described policy wonk who views complex world of pharmaceutical revenue management and government pricing through the lens of data quality and accessibility. So with that, welcome. It's great to have you guys. Well, hang on one second. It looks like it muted you. There we go. I missed you. Missed your words there, Jesse. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to say, otherwise, Michael and I would get in trouble with our marketing people. We have almost all the top 25 pharmas, not just half. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Very good. Don't want to get in trouble with legal or with the marketing folks. So it's great to have you on, and I look forward to this topic. And one of the things that I know that we talk about at some point in the interview is one of my favorite sort of things that people oftentimes dwell on is not just pricing, but it's in general. Like this sensitivity, I feel like that we all sort of see and have and things like that for pharmaceutical, drugs in the United States. I look forward to, not just exploring like the main things around the drug companies, but also sort of, more of the things that do drive pricing and things like that in our interview here. What is it that you feel is driving things with regards to the launch of new drugs outside of the United States? What's driving the slowdown, and what does it mean for patients globally?
So the first thing I want to talk about there is give our viewers a crash course, maybe 30 seconds, in what international reference pricing is. Otherwise, the answer to that question won't make any sense. So it's important for people to understand that outside the United States, the way that countries typically with centralized or socialized health industries price their drugs or change the price in their drugs is by referring to the price of that same drug in other countries. So, for example, that's called reference pricing. So, for example, the price of a drug in Austria might reference the price in Italy or Sweden or Canada. And based on set rules and schedules, if those prices are lower, the Austrian price might also come down. So the internationally outside the United States, the concept of international reference pricing, is what dictates, what countries you launch into first, when those prices start to erode, which countries you'll launch into later because they can only tolerate certain lower prices and things like that. And that was the crash course. Thank you for sitting with me. Now, the issue with to date is that has never involved the United States until recently. So essentially, the United States has never taken part in that. There was no reference to the United States. The United States was never in a market basket. We had our own way of doing things here. But now with the advent of most favored nation pricing, whether it's for Medicaid or Medicare or direct to consumer, a low price you offer in another country could actually impact the price you're getting for certain programs here in the United States. So that has direct impact to launch strategy and into which countries you launch and in what order. And yes, to your point, whether you or not you even launch into certain countries that can only tolerate certain low prices.
It's interesting. It's interesting to me to think about. I mean, because I mean, I certainly know that, like, in the United States, right? So whenever you price certain things, whether it's medical equipment or drugs and other things, like even within the United States, you have this challenge because we have, favored pricing for different segments as well within the United States. One of the examples could be, hey, look, maybe you have Medicare or Medicaid pricing that's impacting, how you price things for the government. And that price also is, expected to be within a certain range, let's say, of other prices that you offer for other things. And so I'm just trying to make sure I frame up the same thing. It sounds to me like that, and I've never heard this before, so it's good to explore it, right? That, other countries, even outside of the United States, impact that same thing.
Yeah, and that's new. That's new. Go ahead, Michael.
It is new, and it's not just launch of new drugs. What's important to understand that it will also impact availability and access for drugs for new indications as they get approved and their scope expands.
Yeah. So, I mean, whenever you think about this problem, how do you think that the United States is thinking about this idea of, like, pricing as being more of a global problem then? I mean, is that something that drug companies are having to just look at more holistically then?
So I think at the most basic perspective, it has always been known, think importation from Canada. It has always been thought that other countries get lower prices than the United States, particularly for branded pharmaceutical products. And this is largely the case. It has largely been the case. Again, I'll use the example of importation from Canada. That's a political point that everybody's heard. The question of why the prices are lower and if they are actually lower in all cases, like for certain cases, as we all know, different programs get different price points. There might be a case where for Medicaid in Florida, their price is already much lower than Canada's price. So there's a lot of variabilities there. But I think generally, because it's a politically astute thing to do, pushing to demonstrate that the United States is now getting the same discounts as other countries sounds good and also plays well because this is just a known thing. This is a known political concept in the ether.
Yeah. And I think it's important, Don, to acknowledge the fact that we're not really comparing apples to apples here. When we talk about prices in Sweden or in Austria, it is the price that the health ministry of Sweden or Austria is paying to the pharmaceutical manufacturer. When we talk about pricing in the United States, we talk about the price that the patient experiences at the pharmacy counter. That's not the same thing. And yet we put them in the same basket of comparison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important, but I personally, and I've talked about on this show previously, I personally was traveling in India at one point in time and had the flu, got 104-degree temperature, was rushed to the emergency room, got some of the best care that I've gotten in my lifetime, had 2 physicians, 4 nurses, walked out with 8 prescriptions. It cost me $8.26. And it's a story that I tell people all the time. I'm like, look, I get this whole idea of, hey, look, you're going to travel to another country. You're terrified as an American citizen, exactly what's the level of care that I'm going to get. But honestly, I felt like I got the best care in my life. And within, a short period of time, I'd recovered, from being sick. And, again, I mean, I sort of play that back because, again, looking at what you guys deal with and then being an outsider, right? I mean, I constantly am blaming a lot of this stuff on all the layers of stuff that we have in the United States, whether it's insurance companies or it's pharmacy benefit managers, or it's, having to pay off the lobbyists that have to go to DC. And, I don't know what those things actually are because this isn't really my world. But I mean, I'd love to know, as you think about like pharmacy benefit managers, they've really built their models around rebates and, but you've indicated that process really isn't sustainable anymore. What's really changed, and then what happens in the industry when the model breaks down?
All right. All right, I'll go first, Michael. So no, it's interesting because for the longest time, for valid reasons, the largest issue that pharmaceutical manufacturers keep bringing up, whether on the Hill or to the public, is the concept that for pay to play, that manufacturers must pay PBMs rebates, otherwise they can't get access to patients. Period. There's the perspective of well, PBMs are negotiating these discounts, but at the same time, if you don't give these discounts, you can't get access, and then you have to give additional discounts when a competing drug comes in, and so it just keeps ballooning and ballooning, and then you have the gross to net bubble, which is, to quote Dr. Adam Fine, that is what we have today. That has been the thing happening for a long time. Now, to say that the rebate model is falling apart, I think it is frayed in certain places, but I wouldn't say it's actually falling apart overall. You still see rebates as a way that pharmaceutical manufacturers maintain at formulary positions. You still see rebates and increasing rebates, the rebate wall, as a strategy manufacturers use to limit competition in therapeutic classes. So I don't think it's going away, but I think for very specific products, the net price is starting to become more visible, and both programs and patients are starting to enjoy that net price, and that's because of the nature of the products themselves, but also some of the other things we're probably going to talk about later in this chat.
Yeah, and I would only add that if there was one thing that I could do to fix the system, or to make the system better for patients, and to drive better affordability of drugs, I would stop linking patient copays to drug list prices. Copays are intended to offset and to make copay, meaning participate in the purchase of the drug, not participate in some fictitious pricing framework. So my copay should be a portion of what my insurance company paid for the drug, not a portion of some list price that is intended to be driven, to drive the market.
Yeah, I'll jump on that, Michael. It's also important to say, if we're talking about things that could resolve it, is that the rebates that manufacturers pay to PBMs are often percentage WAC. They're percentage based. They're percentage of WAC in the simple form. Well, why is that? Why is that the case? If an admin fee is an admin fee, it doesn't cost more to transport the same size pill. Because just the pill's price went up. There's a lot of things here. The last thing I will say, and when I say frayed and ways on, is there's a lot of, especially recent research, that saying that PBMs themselves have been saying we are getting away from rebates, or we're getting away from rebates, or we are passing through 100% of rebates we take to the employers and the plan sponsors. That's one thing. That's another reason why, to your point, the PBM thing's going away. But if you scratch beneath the surface and you read some of the research, they're kind of just redefining rebates. So yes, they're getting rid of rebates in the classic form, but they're transitioning the incentives that they demand to their GPO, and they're calling them now fees. And at the end of the day, manufacturers have to pay billions of dollars in fees to the GPO versus in rebates to the PBM. But we're still where we are with that same high gross price.
And we're still seeing the net prices holding steady or declining.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's important, right, as well to mention again here, right? I mean, the work that you guys are doing is so important because of the fact that you guys have, an awful lot of this data and set in the intersection of these areas. And I think you started to answer this next question, but I want to make sure that if there's anything else you want to explore around this, I'm happy to again, give you some more time on it. But with the increased scrutiny of manufacturer list prices, how are pharmaceutical companies rethinking their pricing strategies? And then also, what are you seeing in the data?
Well, I think what we're seeing, and I won't be speaking out of turn here, and anybody can get this information by simply reading the newspaper, is pharmaceutical manufacturers are holding back on their list prices. but and we are seeing some of the list prices being rolled back and list price reductions being announced because there is scrutiny on of that number. But we're also seeing, right, we're not, those are all public companies. We're not seeing those public companies announce any kind of corresponding revenue reductions in their public filings, right? So it stands to reason that those list price reductions are coupled with other mechanisms that they have to maintain net revenue. And so I think it just speaks to Jesse's point about the gross to net bubble and how the rebates are being redefined.
Yeah, and then the one thing I would add there is, net prices are getting more and more visibility. So it essentially, whether it's direct to consumer or most favored nation, what's often happening is the pharmaceutical manufacturer is saying, we will now just offer the price we eventually do enjoy for this product after we pay all these rebates and fees. We'll just offer it at that cash price and just collect it there without having to sell it at this high price and then ship your way down to that actual net price. So I think net prices, we've been screaming for 20 years that net price needs more visibility to the public. Now I think finally net price is getting that visibility to the public, at least for the really in-demand drugs like the GLP-1s.
Yeah, well, very important. There's also been a lot of talk about tariffs driving down pharmaceutical manufacturing back to the U.S., but you have a different perspective. What's actually fueling the domestic manufacturing boom?
Jesse, I'd love to tell my story that I was on the campus of one of our client manufacturers. They have a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous campus. And when I was there in spring of last year, there have been announcements about their investments in U.S. manufacturing and building labs in the U.S. and everything else. And when I was on their campus, I witnessed those buildings going up. And all the construction going on around it. And it's great. It's fantastic. But if you've ever built your own house or done any repairs in your own home, you know that architecture and permits and construction materials and contractors take forever. So if I see construction going on actively in June, I know it wasn't decided in January to start it. I think what we're seeing is manufacturers rightly packaging all the U.S. investments that they had been planning on making anyway, perhaps accelerating some of those, perhaps streamlining them, but also leveraging those investments to offset some of the tariffs that have been levied across the industry.
Yeah, and I'll give you a personal story as well. So one thing to remember is that the other countries that stand to potentially lose manufacturing, should the U.S. gain manufacturing, will do their own incentives. I was on a trip. I was in Quebec in the fall, and there was a local news story about how Quebec has a large pharmaceutical manufacturing base there. How some pharma company was talking about moving the new location of a factory from Quebec to North Carolina. And the article was about all the incentives Quebec was now adding to keep it there. So there might be a tariff in the United States, but Quebec, the provincial and Canadian governments are going to do whatever they can as well. So there's a tip for tat. It's not just, tariff, okay, we build in the United States. The other thing I'll say is just tariff relief is real. I want to emphasize what Michael said. Manufacturers are taking things that they're either doing anyway, and that might not be well understood, and they're packaging it all together to make it correctly seem that they're doing all this goodness in the United States. And that has been used in many cases as a successful negotiation tool with the current administration to actually get tariff relief. And but at the same time, you see the package, you see a manufacturer release this guidance, and the manufacturer will say, we are spreading a most favored nation price to Medicaid. We're doing all these things. And you see they touted by the administration or by politicians as this is going to save us so much money. Then to Michael's point, you never see a restatement or a different set of expectation setting on that manufacturer's financials. So at the end of the day, that's the proof in the pudding. So they're getting tariff relief, but at the same time, yeah, that doesn't that it's not hinting there's actually genuine new or innovative discounting happening.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of think about these things. I mean, from a drug manufacturing standpoint, right? It's not like you would pick up today. Back to Michael's earlier point, it's not like you would pick up today and then pivot manufacturing tomorrow. You could build a facility, and then you'd have to go through IQ, OQ, PQ, and make sure that the facility is going to perform the way that you said it was going to perform in your original patent, and all of that kind of stuff. All of your drug filing's got to be redone. I mean, this is a big deal when it comes to drugs. It's not like, hey, look, I want to pick up automobile manufacturing and move it somewhere. It's probably a lot easier than it would be on the drug manufacturing side.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We also anecdotally know that the FDA, which inspects these drug facilities, is under strain from staff reductions. I can't imagine that helps accelerate those approvals. But also on the flip side, right, the United States is the place where we're making significant bets on artificial intelligence. The United States is and remains a leader in a lot of the technology advancements. It makes sense to accelerate drug discovery here first. And so those investments make sense. And the fact that the administration is prepared to provide economic incentives for manufacturers, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree with that. And I think, I mean, I kind of wonder, like, is a part of the, let's just say, like, the construction, if the construction you saw, Michael, had anything to do with really building a bioprocess facility or something like that inside of the United States, I kind of wonder, like, was that originally developed? Was that plan originally developed, like, back in COVID times, where somebody said, hey, look, because of what we're seeing with vaccines and because of what we're seeing globally, we want to make sure that we've got a way to react to the next pandemic that comes. Who knows? I mean, these could be, back to your point about permits, this could have been years in the making. Now all of a sudden you're seeing it take traction.
Yeah. It's really easy to do a press release that says such and such American company has broken ground and is building such and such American factory because of such and such tariff. That's very easy and cheap and plays well, but that doesn't mean it's the case.
Yeah. Also true.
But the investment's real. And I think that's where we should acknowledge that it's great that manufacturers are investing in California and North Carolina and in Alabama and wherever we're building manufacturing and research facilities.
For sure. So you mentioned, Michael, in the last statement that you made, you mentioned AI, and I want to kind of come to this because I think that AI drug discovery is a really, big thing. I would love to, hear your thoughts, in terms of how AI is driving drug discovery, economics of pharmaceutical development, and also what infrastructure and operational changes are manufacturers making to support personalized medicine.
Yeah, and maybe Jesse, I'll kick us off in that vein of discussion. I would say, from our perspective, from pharmaceutical revenue management and pricing perspective, the areas that we look at in maybe Horizon 2 or Horizon 3 is what is going to be the access framework for personalized medicine, and how will manufacturers have to interface with insurance companies, public, like Medicare, Medicaid, or private, in delivering those personalized medicines. And that's where all these pricing structures need to evolve. And that's the kind of stuff that we have to think about. How do we support the ecosystem? We don't yet have the answers, but I think that that's the direction that we need to be thinking about. That's the direction we need to go, because what we find, at least that's what I find, we had this brief chat about our love affair with the Excel spreadsheets. We we can't support that. We can't support that new and expanded framework where while our colleagues on drug discovery are moving at 100 miles an hour,
Yes.
and we're still stuck in the 90s.
And that's the one thing I would clarify is the pharmaceutical industry has been pioneers and innovators in AI on the science side, on the clinical side, on the drug discovery side, basically leveraging AI to, conceive of new molecules and testing it, completely using AI frameworks. So they've been an innovator there. Now, on the contracting side, and to Michael's point, on the access side, it's only now happening. And personalized medicine is a challenge. There's this wonderful article that NPR published last week about some of the first Medicaid contracts for certain new therapies that are curative for sickle cell, which is incredible. Think of where we are right now, that we actually have a curative therapy for sickle cell, which causes thousands of people to be sick. But it's very expensive, and Medicaid has now launched these innovative pricing agreements where they only pay if the actual drug is deemed to be successful. And that seems like an obvious thing to do, but think of the data that needs to be exchanged to demonstrate that. Think of the clinical indicators that need to be tracked. Think of how that needs to be exchanged between the pharmaceutical manufacturer and the state government and that patient's doctor who is treating the sickle cell anemia. So that's now this new frontier where we're having to use AI tools in that area, which had previously been left to the science and drug discovery area of the company.
Yeah, it comes back. I had said this a while back as well, that I feel like we're at kind of an interesting point in history where we're going to have to start considering other ways to look at the things that are coming, right? Because if you look at like the number of, let's just say the number of startups that fail, and the amount of drug discovery in general that fails, sure, AI is going to help with a portion of that, but I also think, there's a part of this that the processes that are built force you down a pathway of doing research in a certain way with, following these certain steps. And so, I feel for the researcher that's in the midst of all of this, having to think of, okay, so what is the best way that I can use the process that I have to follow, but also if I need to fail, like fail early, fail fast. But, also you kind of think about the challenges that they have, ultimately, is, how do I use these new tools and implement, those plus, back to your point, right? The AI tools aren't getting applied across the board inside of,
Exactly.
life sciences companies. They're getting applied on the drug discovery side, and still from a process and technology standpoint, there's a lot of the areas of, life science companies that need to catch up. So.
Agreed. It's something that we see, and our manufacturers ask us what their peers are doing. Obviously, it's generalities. Some are a bit further ahead of introducing AI into predictive analytics or gross to net. Some are still just doing pilots. I affirm everything you just said, Don. There's not a uniformity out there.
Yeah, I'm looking down at my phone because we got a comment from Umar Hyatt as well. And the comment is, if anything AI could do would be to improve the manufacturing or development. But when it comes to the drug discovery, human physiology, biology is so complex, and we human beings understand only a fraction of it. And so that, we struggle with the machines. Hence, AI would do very little on the discovery side, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't use it. So just wanted to mention that as well. So thank you for the comment, Umar. I appreciate it. And I also wanted to bring us to like an access and policy sort of discussion as well. So programs like TrumpRx aim to provide direct-to-consumer discounts to patients. You've suggested that these won't meaningfully expand access at scale. Why not, and what would actually move the needle on coverage?
All right, so let me take that because I'm the one who said that, and I've been quoted on that quite a bit. So let me take this opportunity. So I want to say what I always say is, first of all, anything that expands access is good. Period. End of sentence. Like anything that expands access is good. Any program, discount, website, store that makes it so somebody who previously would benefit from a therapy but couldn't get it can now get that therapy is good. Okay, but at the same time, if you're looking for things that really dramatically expand access, these are not them. And let me give you some reasons for that. I'm going to talk about direct to consumer in general, and then I'll make a comment about TrumpRx specifically. Direct to consumer pricing is basically saying that if the patient pays cash, literally like cash through a website, they can get the drug at a sometimes significantly lower discount than what the list price would be if they just walked up to the pharmacy counter with no sort of discount or insurance. And often that is significant. So there's certain drugs where it's gone down from $1,300 to $400. Now that's a big deal, but at the same time, that's $400 a month is still way too expensive for most Americans to get access to a therapy, especially if it's a long-term therapy. The plain truth of the matter is that most Americans or most people get access to drugs through their insurance plan. And the way to get affordable access to drugs, the way to expand access is have it covered by insurance. And therefore, you just pay your copay or you use the manufacturer discount card to help you with your copay. And that's what expands access. That brings it down to a reasonable price that whether you have Medicaid or Medicare or commercial or TRICARE, and that Americans can afford. Removing insurance from the picture and giving a near discount, but still having it be very expensive, that does expand access, but that's not revolutionary. That's just expanding access to people who couldn't afford $1,300 but can't afford $400. Now, if it became $20 to everybody, that would be a big difference. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Now, TrumpRx itself is a central clearinghouse, and it's a good idea because essentially these manufacturers all have their own financial assistance programs. They all have copay cards, direct-to-consumer options, patient assistance programs, all these things. And yes, right now you can go to EMD Serona's website, and you can go to Pfizer's website, and you go to Astellas' website, and you can find it. And TrumpRx, at least in its initial form when it goes live soon, is basically be a link to all of those things. I'm oversimplifying, I know, but it's not going to be a platform where you order drugs from it and you get shipped to you. It's going to go there where you type in a drug and it's going to link you to Pfizer's website or to EMD Serona's website or one of the website. And those websites pretty much already exist. So is that good? Does that expand access? Yes, there are likely people who will find out about a direct-to-consumer option for the drug that they're prescribed because they went to TrumpRx.com. But again, is this a sea change? I just don't believe it is.
Yeah, and Jesse, I would bottom line your answer by pointing out that Don's question was, what would actually move the needle on coverage? Actual coverage would move the needle on coverage.
Yeah, coverage, exactly. TrumpRx is not. I tell this. TrumpRx is not insurance. TrumpRx is not a PBM. It's not an insurance plan. It is a website to link to cash discount programs and other patient assistance programs that already exist.
Which is great for the few people who can afford the medication, but don't choose to buy insurance or didn't buy insurance.
Yeah, ultimately true. So whenever you look at the regulatory landscape right now, what compliance challenges are keeping your clients up at night?
I think it's the compliance uncertainty. It's not the one thing. It's the thing that I think it's the roller coaster that we find ourselves on. Jesse, you famously said when one of our executives had asked, well, what does the Inflation Reduction Act replace? And you said, no, it doesn't. It adds to. And yeah, I think that very nicely sums it up.
Yeah, and again, so it's not just that large laws are being passed like the Inflation Reduction Act, and they're being enacted over years, and we're dealing with aftershocks. There's court cases. We're prepping for enacting some component like the 340B rebate only to press pause at the last minute. Maximum fair price negotiations. We keep learning more, and then there's legal intervention that makes the track change as well. So I agree with Michael. Yes, we could say the Inflation Reduction Act as broadly is a concern to manufacturers. We could say the maximum fair price provision specifically. We also say 340B as a whole when it comes to both contract pharmacies and also claims collection. And these things like that are hot topics. But it is not those individual hot topics that people are just consuming and dealing with. It's exactly as Michael said. Those keep changing and being messed with. The new guidance comes out, and then the court decides something, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's the most challenging now than it's been the 2 decades I've been doing this. It's just almost every day it is it just some new opinion comes out or some new letter, and everything gets tossed out and re-added back in, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I saw compliance, I mean, overall, the idea that I had in mind was this foundational idea of, how do you comply not just with the FDA, but also you've got all these other pressures and other areas of the industry as well that you're trying to comply with. And I certainly understand sort of the downstream effects of all of these decisions, right, that are happening in the world, that are impacting these things as well. So very important point.
Yeah, and just Don, just to give your viewers and readers and nightmares that so that they can share in our nightmares. Think about the state legislative activism. We're seeing not only are we seeing emergence of state drug price transparency laws over the last decade or so, we're now seeing the drug affordability boards, like in Colorado, making binding pricing decisions. So all the things that we've seen at the federal level over the last 2 or 3 decades are now going to get federated down to 50 states, each of which is going to make their own rules.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's kind of interesting because you're mentioning Colorado, and I sit in Colorado, and from every sort of indicator that's out there, right, in terms of like buying insurance on the exchange, which I have to do as an independent employer, my insurance in Colorado cost me double what the national average is. So whenever they come out and they say, all these national averages, it's like, hey, look, at a base level, my insurance costs double. Then on top of that, we have some other challenges in my family. So we buy better insurance, and by that, it essentially is like triple the national average now. And so I just sort of, sit here going, okay, so yes, I understand the struggle on one side, but I also it's already pretty bad as as an American citizen to look at like, hey, look, I mean, there probably are plenty of people that are paying a third of what I pay, right now in health insurance, which is just, I mean, astronomically crazy. But that's my personal struggle and wanting to share my nightmare back with you.
It's a good point, Don. What I would encourage people to do when they think about increasing healthcare premiums is think of all that goes into that, not just insurance company profits, but yes, do more expensive drugs trickle down to higher insurance premiums? Yes, but more expensive hospitals, more expensive physicians, more expensive everything trickles down into that. And if you were to look at a graph of the rise of drug prices versus rise of hospital stays and things like that, you might find some interesting things that will tell you more about which contributes more to that higher premium than which.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michael, you've talked about viewing pharmaceutical revenue management through the underlying data. What does data quality actually mean in this context, and where do most organizations fall short?
Now, it's a great question. It's a question that our ecosystem, our customers, the pharmaceutical manufacturers frequently struggle with. The reality is that for all of the technological advances that have happened over the last 10 years, the space of pharmaceutical revenue management remains highly disconnected. We no longer use faxes to exchange data, but we haven't come that far along from the days when we got green bar reports. And in the process of all of those data exchanges, mistakes are made. And it's not that the pharmaceutical manufacturers don't want to pay these rebates to PBMs, right? The objective, if you're a pharmaceutical company, you want to pay the rebates. You want your drugs to be on formulary. You want patients to have access to your drugs under the insurance plans that they've paid dearly for. But what I, as a pharmaceutical manufacturer, don't want to do is have to pay the rebates, but then not get the access. And when we talk about data quality, it's all of those steps that the data has to go through as it returns from the patient having gotten the drugs back to the pharmaceutical manufacturer so that they can understand the access landscape, so that they can adequately reimburse all of the different players in the ecosystem. And that data is far from clean. That data is far from available. And it creates added challenges. It creates added revenue leakage. And it frankly slows down the whole process.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Jesse, do you have another comment?
Yeah, I want to emphasize the cleanliness, because it's if the onus is very much on, pretty much exclusive to the pharmaceutical manufacturer to guarantee or to improve the cleanliness of the data. Because if the PBM submits data that has duplicate scripts in it, or where formularies aren't properly categorized, they get a higher rebate. Great, there's not much onus on the PBM to make sure it's clean. It's up to the pharma, whether it comes to formulary validation or script scrubbing, to really clean the data, which again slows the whole process and slows the whole rebating cycle, as Michael mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, such a critical point, overall, that, you think about all of the things that this information also is used for kind of downstream, and, just ultimately, very important that people have, solid data quality coming into it as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So for life science executives who are listening and trying to navigate all of this complexity, what's the most important operational investment that they should be making right now?
I think I always counsel the executives I speak with to consider two things. One is, what can AI do for you in the near term? And where are your people deployed? Because people, qualified analysts, qualified colleagues in this space are exceedingly rare. We even talked about it before the start of the podcast, right?
And they're expensive.
They are expensive, but they're also precious, because I think there's only like 2,500 people in the United States who really genuinely understand how this works, and deploying them at your organization to do the most value-added tasks of increasing access and accurately managing your financial resources should be paramount. And so how can you backfill those professionals with technology, with AI enabled technology that will make their lives easier and will make your financial outlook even more profitable or more advantageous?
Yeah, so I think Michael brings up a good point when it comes to process and technology. I want to say one more thing with people, is you legitimately, you have to break down all silos. When I started doing this, commercial decisions were made without any understanding really of what these government rebates were. It was just, there were a few percentage points and it was fine. You need to have everybody in the room right now. You need to have a fully understanding and projection of every government program ramification, of every pricing action you take, including your launch price, before you settle on a pricing action or launch price. And believe it or not, there are still silos out there. So if I were an executive, I would say, are the GP people sitting in the room when WAC prices are changed? When it comes to maximum fair price negotiations, do I have half the company understanding what's happening? And unfortunately, that's what's necessary now, and AI can also help improve that a bit.
Yeah. And Jesse, for the first time last year, we have to break the silo between the US centric pricing decision making and international pricing decision making. You have to bring our conversation full circle here.
I think it's an important point, but I also think, the one thing that's sort of in your last couple of statements about AI that sort of made me wonder, and I'm sorry for not prepping you for this in advance, but just like through our conversation, it becomes more and more important. So, are you guys using AI, and if so, how?
I'm thrilled to answer that, and I will
That's
do
so
my
fit.
best
Thank you for asking.
not to sound like a commercial. So we are right, and we are using AI really in three areas. One, of course, both Jesse and I work for a software company, so software development and software testing is being accelerated with AI across the board, and we use AI in that fashion. We've also introduced AI. Our technology is very complicated because these business processes and compliance processes are very complicated. And so we've introduced AI that assists our users in using our technology, in understanding the processes that they have to go through. It's the next level of, the help button in within the applications, and that's something that I think users of any software should demand. But we're also extending AI capabilities to actual functionality of our software. There's a lot of mechanics in this process. You've got to go here to get a file. You got to move data from one point to another. You have to route whatever it is you're doing through a workflow for submissions. A lot of those steps can be done more efficiently with AI, so that the people can be deployed more efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny because as a digital marketing agency, we went down this route a while ago where we're like, okay, so, do we use it for content generation and writing? Do we use it for then, kind of moving stuff around for clients? Do we actually use it for publishing to their, social media calendars and things like that? And so there's like all these things now that we built that just, you kind of rewind the clock 9 months or so, and I think it'd be hard to look at the organization as being the same from our perspective. But I also see a lot of the clients that we deal with are kind of constrained by, some of these things where they're looking at like, hey, look, I buy this software, let's say in your case, from a vendor, and then I have this added capability that they have, and then it just brings in all these other questions about, hey, look, what levels of access does this AI have, and things like that. I know I face it on my side. I'm sure you guys face it on yours as well. It's like, yeah, how much access and things, does this provide any sort of a regulatory or even a legal exposure for them that they don't want to have, which then leads to another conversation, I feel like. So, yeah.
Yeah, we get those questions pretty often. And a lot of it, what we do is highly regulated. We've been talking about government pricing and rules and Medicaid and Medicare, and like you need to calculate your Medicaid prices to the sixth decimal, otherwise you could be fined. So a lot of folks are saying, well, I need humans there. But the issue is, yes, you need humans to review the result. You need humans to review exceptions. You need humans to be able to understand where the number came from. But you don't need a human to process a claim from step one to step two to step three to step four. You need a human to see if any validation is triggered on that claim. But those are the kind of things that, to Michael's point, if we could enable, agentic or other AI technology there, we could make those subject matter experts who are very valuable and very expensive not spend their time clicking next to process the claim. And that's kind of where we're, focusing right now.
Yeah, ultimately so important. All right, so the last three questions are for both of you. So what inspires you about the future of the life science industry?
Drug discovery. Yeah. Being able to be part of the system that is able to create sickle cell therapies. Whether, right, we work with manufacturers who are working to cure Alzheimer's. It's an imperative contribution.
Yeah, my brother is a geneticist. He's a physician. He's a geneticist, and he has been in practice. He talks about how genetics in practice used to be diagnosis and then symptom mitigation, and because you would determine what the genetic disease a child had, and then you focus on symptom mitigation. And now he's actually curing some of them. He's actually able to find out what the genetic disease is. And yes, it's a $2 million shot he's prescribing, but that child is now cured or substantially benefited from this therapy. And that just, as Michael said, that just amazes me. That just absolutely amazes me. Scourges on society, like certain mutations of hemophilia are potentially now have curative therapies. Diabetes, of course, if you're diabetic, it's always 5 years from now, it'll be cured. Apparently, 5 years from now actually will be cured. And so these things I agree with Michael. Just being even a small part of this is just very, very heartwarming.
And look, I tell this story, right? So my husband is diabetic, and he wears the Libre patch on the back, like many other diabetic patients do. The change in his day-to-day lifestyle, the lifestyle impact of that, and to be part of that is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. What concerns you as you look at where things are heading?
The lack of funding of basic research. I'm very concerned about, just specifically, some of the cuts that have been made to places like the NIH and the CDC. I like to remind people that, certain types of now medications that are changing our lives started with very, very basic research. Very famously, GLP-1s were rooted in study of the venom of Gila monsters, because Gila monsters could not eat for many, many months and then eat and not get a huge sugar spike. And how could they do that if they, that type of thing? So that was basic research that was publicly funded by places like the NIH. So the concern that we have is we've just been seeing all these incredible innovations and all these wonderful therapies we've been talking about. But my concern is in 10 years, those therapies that we're supposed to have in 10 years are going to be based on the basic research we should be doing today. And a lot of the funding for that has been cut. So that's what keeps me up at night.
My concern is there's a lot more practical, I think, or at least a lot more short term. I think we are about to export our highly inefficient and highly complicated drug pricing system. We're already seeing in Germany the government allowing non-public rebates, which is basically the formulary rebates that we have.
That's what we've got. Yeah.
And we know that, right, Don, you shared your family's perspective on the cost of insurance. If we were to export some of these systemic inefficiencies to other industrialized countries, are we doing the world a disservice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ultimately, very important. And I, just kind of to echo a little bit of Jesse's original statement as well. I also believe that 10 years from now, when researchers turn around to grab that next round of innovations, they're not going to be there. We're going to see a massive sort of gap, because people are all of a sudden going to because we know the government funding doesn't come back immediately either. That's the other side of this, is that, even once people say, hey, look, I see that there's a change that we need to make and we need to bring some of this back, it's not going to be immediate either. And that's, just to echo the point even more, I think, there's a lot to be concerned here. And then lastly,
the one thing I would add there is that, or the discoveries will still be made, but they'll be made at Chinese and Canadian and Australian universities, and those companies when they would have been made here. Exactly.
Yeah. Hopefully, very, very true point. The last point here, what excites you about the work that you're doing right now?
The data, it's unfathomably large, and the potential for insights coming from it, I find extremely titillating. I'll say. Well, Michael, he's the data guy, but we're only now starting to get our arms around really what we can do and what we can provide manufacturers as insights to pricing, performance, contracting. And I think the sky's the limit there, and I think it's going to be really fascinating.
I agree with Jesse. Data is definitely exciting, but it's bridging the international data with the US data. It's, to me, being able to really support manufacturers in global pricing decisions is really really cool to see.
Yeah, to kind of layer on top of that, I mean, I guess also, Michael, from your perspective, are you seeing and using AI a lot to kind of help you with that level of understanding? Is that one of the things that you're leveraging today?
Absolutely. We look at we look at the product capabilities, and we both look at it with an AI lens on creating software requirements and doing the other mechanical things that a software company does. But even as we look at being able to clean data, being able to ingest data, all of those conversations start with, well, how can AI help us? And maybe we'd had the plan on how to do it without AI for some years ago, and now we can do it better and also more efficiently with the advent of AI technologies.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. So anybody that's interested in Model N, I would encourage you to go to modeln.com. Jesse or Michael, anything final to share?
This has been great. Yeah.
Yeah, our appreciation. We enjoy talking with you, and I enjoy this conversation greatly.
Yeah. So Michael and Jesse, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success Podcast. I've greatly appreciated our conversation as well. I could say that it's opened my mind in terms of several different things in our industry, and I greatly appreciate your spending time with me and for sharing with our listeners and viewers your views as well in terms of our industry. So thanks a lot, and I wish you well. Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it. And last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.